Ben, here we are looking at Giovanni di Paolo's Crucifixion, painted probably in the mid-15th century in Siena. And what we're looking at is actually a fragment of a much larger work. So this is a fragment of something called a predella, which is this box-like step that we find in altarpieces, wherein the main tier goes above this. So this object probably would have sat directly on the altar, and in fact would have been precisely what the priest presiding over the altar would have seen. The other fragments of this predella are now scattered all around the world in different collections. But interestingly, this is the only one with a gold ground. And because it features the crucifixion, this crucial event, it probably formed the very center of that predella.
That's interesting. I suppose the gold in part signals the very special importance of this event in the story of Christ. It's the culmination, in a sense, of his whole ministry until this point. But also something curious, which is that Christians believe that this horrific act, this horrific death, is at the same time a glorious act of God, something that opens the gate of glory to all believers. And that, I think, expresses something of the double meaning of the crucifixion as it's been understood in Christian tradition. On the one hand, it's an act of judgment. This is what the world did to someone who came on behalf of God, embodying truth and righteousness and mercy, and the world couldn't stand it and tried to blot it out. And some of the figures, I think, in this scene turn away from this, almost to represent that particular sort of reaction. And it's on those that this judgment seems to fall. But at the same time, it's something far more optimistic, which is to say it's an act of commitment by God in Christ to the world, so much so that he will even undergo death to express his love for this world, even though it rejects him. And that's why in Christian tradition it's sometimes called a moment where a new covenant is established. And this is a new beginning. Although it looks like an ending, it's actually a new beginning. Christians celebrate that, what they call that new covenant between God and humanity in the Eucharist, which, as you say, would have taken place right under this predella, with the priest consecrating bread and wine to represent Christ's body and blood, but also to represent that commitment of God to the world forever. And I love the fact that the blood that spurts from Christ's side would have been right above the chalice of the wine, which was being consecrated as the blood of Christ to be distributed to those who gathered there.
I think another interesting thing that Giovanni di Paolo is doing in this composition is that he's separated out his figures. So you'll see that there's an area here of all female figures. They're holy women, they all have halos, and they're all responding to the crucifixion in a different sort of way. The Virgin Mary here in blue, bringing her hands to her head. And rather interestingly, the figure of Mary Magdalene, one of Jesus's closest followers, has turned her back to the crucifixion, as if she can't bear to look at it. Whereas we have John the Evangelist here with his hands enfolded in a kind of gesture of prayer, looking up at Christ. And then this very interesting inclusion of men in elaborate and quite exotic looking hats here. And they seem to all turn their back, as you say, to this event. And they seem to be debating what's going on. And they seem to be counting on their fingers.
Perhaps enumerating all the wrongs that he's done. This is, in one way, an ending, but there is another step to come, and we see a little glimpse of that down here at the foot of the cross, a window into the underworld, the place of the dead, which is where Christ must go next, and his body will be laid in the tomb, and he will join the dead in that place. And that's what we're going to look at in our next film, which is about the entombment of Christ.